That's a nice picture.
That's oil on canvas. That's Venice.
Terrific.
And Willie Vasilopoulos gave me that collage there.
That's gorgeous. That's right up your alley.
Yeah.
Bunch of
And
instruments.
I like the picture over the.
Oh, that's nice.
And everything in here came from Goodwill or Salvation Army.
Yeah, that's what we
The
did.
rugs, the
Way to
tables.
go.
That's beautiful.
That was a music book cover.
Uh-huh.
And the book was shot, so I took the cover off and
Terrific.
framed it.
This is very nice.
And that's really old, that piece.
Jeez. What do we got over here? That's just pretty nice little flowers.
Yeah, it's just so.
This is Carl's lovely little house.
Yeah.
So Carl, what are we going to talk about?
What I want to cover, if you just peek through that door, you see a cello over in the corner, and I have glued the neck back on. And what I want to start with is the life-changing episode of when I went to the third grade.
I'm listening.
Yeah,
Don't- I have I'm working out something here. Go ahead.
in the third grade, Holyoke got a new music teacher, Miss George, who was a classically trained harpist and was playing with an orchestra in New York, and for whatever reason came back to Holyoke, where her father was mayor. And they got her a job, and she wanted to teach the third grade.
Yeah, I'm listening.
And what she taught, now you know when you take music lessons,
We're getting settled here. Yep.
when you take
That's the
music
picture.
lessons,
Fine.
all these teachers will teach you how to read music.
Yes.
She didn't.
Right. Good.
She taught solfeggio, the European method of ear training. So as little third grade kids, we learned to sing do, re, mi. And some kids were, of course, some kids were singing harmony. Mi, re, so, fa, mi. We were singing mi, re, do, right?
Sure.
Would you like some grape juice?
I think we're all set. Are you? You okay? I think it's rather funny that outside your window
Yeah.
it says cannabis.
Marijuana, they do business. Every 9 seconds, somebody new goes in there.
Oh boy.
Average sale is $50. I think if I take a lozenge, my voice will.
My Lossinger is your game.
You guys want a cough drop?
No thanks.
No, thank you.
Hey Carl,
Yeah.
my Lossinger is your game.
So, this little lady taught us, we had music, but the notes were a little bigger, and we were interested in the intervals.
Sure.
And it was mi, re, do, re, mi, and then we get into other songs. But as a direct result of a year of that class, for the rest of my life, I heard music in terms of solfeggio.
Sure.
Prior to that, when I was 6 years old, my grandfather bought a Philco radio, and I listened to the Lone Ranger, and the theme song was the William Tell Overture. And I heard it week after week after week, and remembered it. So in later years, and even to this day, I can play the Lone Ranger. I don't memorize songs. I just have had to hear them, and somehow they come back into the brain. So I didn't do much with music from the third grade going up, although I did go to the library and listen to Jose Turby play piano. I love Chopin on the piano. and Turby was a classy pianist. But when I was a junior in high school, we moved to Rugby Street in Holyoke, and my next door neighbor was Larry Chesky, and he had a little Polish trio band, Franny Kaczynski and Danny Lipinski, and they played weddings. Chesky had taken accordion lessons when he was 6, and by the time he was 13, this guy was a pro. He could really play that accordion. And his father got a job for a 5-piece band, which was going to be a radio broadcast in West Warren. So Joe bought a bass fiddle, and he was going to join the band. So he hired a guy from Springfield, an Italian guy, to come up and give him 6 lessons. After 3 lessons, Joe couldn't remember the names of the strings. So the teacher said, "Kid, come over here." So I got 3 lessons. So once I learned how to hold the bass, how to strike the bass, and I learned my scale on that fingerboard, easy, boom, 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 boom. So I played with Chesky's band for a while, and you had to join the union in those days. And at one point, the union called me up. There was a 14-piece dance band in Chicopee playing at the Palador, and he needed a bass player. And there were very few bass players in those days. Kids weren't playing bass fiddle. So I went over and got the job, and I remember the song Harbor Lights. It was all ballads and that kind of stuff, you know. I was with them for a while, and then I kind of got the yen to play swing music or jazz. But there was something different about it. And as fate would have it, another neighbor of mine was Chuck Andrus. Chuck Andrus was Woody Herman's bass player. Get out of here.
It's out of the world.
And he was on leave for a while. So I went over to his house, told him what the situation was. He went down cellar and he gave me an hour. And he taught me how to walk. That's all you do. You start with a root and you chase it down, and you on the chord change and jump up. And in later years, I heard the best Negro bass player there was playing with a band, and he played exactly the same thing I had it made. So then I got a call. The union sent me over to Agawam, Mass. Dutch Werthammer was an older guy and a really great piano player. And he hired a couple of young guys for his band. One of them was Joe Roccasano, who had studied alto sax with Alameda, who was an internationally known sax player. The drummer was Al Voigt, who had studied with Sefcik, who taught Morello. And the singer was Lorraine Cousins, who had developed her pipe singing in a church choir. But Milty Bernstein came off the road with Shep Field's band, and he coached her in solfeggio. She not only looked like an angel, she had a built-in vibrato, and she could belt out a song. So we're down there. So I went down to the Green Gables, because the union sent me down. And the third song he starts playing was Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which I remember learning when Judy Garland sang in '39 at the Victory Theater, and I remembered the song. So third time around, I said, I got one. So I da 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 all the way through, and you got the job. He fired the guy that was sick, and I got the job. About a month later, Stan Kenton puts an ad in the New York Times. He's going to audition for musicians for his new band, and it was Dr. Stan Kenton. So Roccasano, Voigt, and Lorraine Cousins go down to the audition, and I went just to keep them company, because I still can't read a note of music, and with Kenton, you had to read music like you read headlines. So he gets the drummer up first, and Al Voigt could read music and play it any way he wanted. And he played piano and he listened to the drum, hired him on the spot. Roccasano gets up, and he was good, but so there was a kid from Brooklyn who was good too. But his appearance was lousy, and he had no emotion. And Roccasano was a spirited guy. So he said, do something different. So Roccasano went up to the piano, took a piece of sheet music, turned it upside down, and cider read it.
Wow.
He got the job. It was a gimmick he had learned.
Whoa.
And then when he heard Lorraine Cousins sing, that was it. They got hired from the band I was in. The point is, to this day, I am not a good musician, but I've always been good enough faker to play with you if you're good. Now, you remember when I met you at Franz, we were up to about 1 o'clock in the morning.
That's fine.
I was playing my corny old melodies and you were going around. I happened to look up the word obbligato in the dictionary one day, and it says it is necessary to music. I mean, not everybody can play the melody notes, and orchestras don't do that. I mean, you've got guys weaving in and out. So in either case, along with his playing of music, I got fascinated with buying and selling basses. In 1950, I had won a full scholarship to Tufts, and my stepfather wouldn't let me go. He took me to the Holyoke Soldiers' Home, where he was clerk of the works, and got me on as an apprentice bricklayer, and took my wages, thank you. He was a nice stepfather, he was.
Jeez.
Well, when winter comes, there was no work in those days, so they didn't cover up.
What did you get your scholarship in? What subject?
Mathematics, I had 100% average in all math courses. So I had a bass fiddle that needed work, and I didn't know how to fix it. And I heard of Lou DiLeone in New Haven. So I drive down, a kid, 18 years old or whatever, knock on the door, the little Italian guy opens the door. He smiles, he says, I can't work in those kind of basses. He says, I restore basses for the Metropolitan Opera and the New York Symphony. He was the guy. You know the extension you see on these bass fiddles?
The most see.
Yeah, he's the guy that invented them.
Oh.
Ooh, yeah. And he said, I need an extra set of hands. Would you like to learn how to repair your basses? He says, I won't pay you, but you won't pay me. My sister will feed you, and I have a guest room upstairs. I lived with him for 5 months. Every day we'd go down cellar, and he told me, show me what you had to do. What a repair, man. When he fixed the crack in the bass, everything was dovetailed. And when you get old violins, you see these cleats they put on the back. Louis didn't put cleats because that added weight and changed the whole tonation of an instrument. He inletted bow ties. And for varnish, they say, oh, don't varnish is, the secret's not in the varnish, it's in the carving and the way they're voiced that way. And he built a little house out in the back with a spit. And he put the neck here and the tailpiece, and this bass would spin around, and he sprayed his varnish on. He had a special mix he used. One day I went to visit Reggie Richard on the way to Worcester. Reggie had 400 violins in his cellar that were tag sale violins. But I like buying the old fiddles that the neck is off and this and that. And I could buy them for $50 a piece and sell them for 150. Every week I was down there. One week I went down after about a year, and I was kind of worn out, the old stuff. He said, I got a fiddle upstairs. He said, but it's got no varnish, but it's Italian. I had never seen an Italian violin. So he brings it down, and an antique dealer had gotten his violin and stripped it with zip strip, which is the worst stuff in the world. And some of it went through the F-hole and burnt the label. But he didn't strip the scroll, and it was amber, a nice amber. So I took the top off the fiddle, I got that label out kind of carefully. It was beat. But I brought it to my buddy Ben Marcus, who owned Marcus Printing, and I went to high school. And I said, I need a couple labels exactly like this. And he had the right paper, and he duplicated it. So I cleaned the inside of that fiddle. I redressed the outside to make sure. And when you varnish a fiddle, you don't put varnish or anything with color on it, because it'll change the spruce. The fibers will turn black. You have to put a coat of shellac first. Then you put your varnish. So I went to Lou DeLeone and I bought some Italian oil varnish. 3 coats, he says, 3 coats, and you gotta rub it in between. And I did. It took me about a month to get this fiddle where I wanted it. And I found an old alligator case with red velvet. The new label, I spent like $80 for a set of strings, the real Eudoxia strings. And I mounted it up and it sounded sweet. So I was down to Lou, and in the store he never mentioned prices, because there's people milling around. And you never told him what you wanted for it. He told you what he'd pay. I'm in it for $100 plus my labor, right? And I reach in it, I got the fiddle on the case, about this far away. And I open up the case, the back of the case, and I take the fiddle out by the neck. I stand there and just show him the back. And he says, Eugenio Degani, Florence, Italy, 1954.
Wow.
From the back.
Wow.
I mean, you're talking about a guy that knows instruments. That's what it was. So he takes his paper and he draws, turns it around, $2,600. Most I ever made on a fiddle.
Sure.
Then he smiles, he says, you got a little time? I said, yeah. Picks up the phone, Giorgio, I got your violin. Boom. 10 minutes later, this big black Packard shows up, and a swarthy little Italian with a camel hair coat shows up, hangs it up, comes over, takes the fiddle out of the case. It was in tune. Ding, ding, ding. Put it to the shoulder hole, and he flew around the room with that fiddle. What a voice. How much? Is that enough, he says. It was $4,500.
Woo! Everybody's turning a profit. That's beautiful.
Everybody was happy over that. So what this fiddle teacher did, it got me into music, it got me into instruments, and it got me into, I love to restore beat up old instruments, but low end, because you know yourself, if you want to pick up a playing fiddle, you're not going out and spend $1,000 for a fiddle, $100, $150, you know. Although today, when my sisters out in Indiana needed a fiddle, I bought a brand new Chinese. There's one brand, I can't remember the name right now. You can buy them with a bow, a case, new strings. They're clean. You give it to a kid, and they play, and they sound just as good as those old German factory fiddles.
Yep.
That the reason they called them factory fiddles was Germany was starving back around 1880. And the immigrants were coming to America, and Rudolf Wurlitzer started his music company in New York. And he sent his man Fairfield to Germany to buy instruments. And he went over there and he bought like 100 violins and bought them, and they sold in a week. So he kept importing them from Germany forever. And you could buy a new violin, Stradivarius copy. I think they were $1.50 with a bow and a case. Because he was only paying 50 cents a piece for them. I mean, starving.
Wow.
And
why was Germany starving then? Any idea?
well, for some kind of income, there was a guy that was he was the promoter. He went to one poor family with some wood and a like a plan, and this family made the tops, carved them out to the plan, and then did the back and the sides, and he brought them to a little factory were out of put them together and varnished them. That's why they were called factory fiddles. But to do it for that, I mean, they were working for pennies. Pennies.
Probably some
Political upheaval? What?
greedy guy at the top or something.
I was just wondering politically or historically why. You said they were starving, and I was thinking,
Well,
I don't know,
you know,
something to research.
times were tough, even in
Laurie's
this,
gonna look up.
even in this country. I suppose 1880 was Reconstruction or
Right.
something like that.
Right? Things are weird.
What it's done for me too is I've gotten to play in places I wouldn't have been invited to. I got to meet people I wouldn't have met. I got a call from a kid once. He wanted to beg a banjo I had advertised for $300. He said, "If you give me, I'll give you an extra $50 if you bring it to Brattleboro." So he had a house guest out behind the house when I got there, and he was jamming. So I took out the tenor and jammed with him, and it was Pete Seeger. So I'm jamming with Pete Seeger. When I retired to Florida, I had an ad in the paper to sell a Gibson A mandolin, pumpkin face, $650. The voice says, "I'm not driving, would you bring it by?" He lived 10 blocks away. Sitting on the front porch with a bottle of Jack Daniels here and a guitar there. I hand him the mandolin. He says, "I don't play mandolin. What's it sound like?" So I played "Should the Circle Be Unbroken," and picked up the guitar and finished the song, and that was Johnny Cash.
Jesus.
He bought it for Roseanne or whatever her name was.
Yes.
I saw her playing it on TV. When Alison Krauss came to Pearl Street, when she first started, she was not a singer.
Yeah.
She was a bluegrass fiddle player and a good one, and a shy girl. She was really shy. But it was a cold winter night, and Will Cormier came over to me. He said, "Have you got any fiddles in your trunk?" And I always had a fiddle in my trunk. The neck came off her fiddle, and she had no spare. Ooh. So I brought it inside, and it was nice fiddle made in Maine. I can't remember the guy in Maine.
Must have been cold.
It was cool, but it's all right. I brought it in the bus. She took it out. And she went, "Digga. How much?" I said, $650, and that was a fair price for that fiddle. And she turned to the big guy and she says, "Pay him." That was it. So I get in with the entourage out of the cold, and she acknowledged that she had a little trouble tonight, but I saved the day with my fiddle.
Oh, cute. That's great.
When George Gruen started in business, I was living in Hoyoke, and I had a wall full of banjos. He knocked on the door cold. He said, "You're the guy that's got banjos?" And he bought 6 gold-plated banjos off my wall.
Who is that person?
George Gruen owns the big store in Nashville, Gruen Guitars.
Yeah.
If you're Johnny, if you're Willie Nelson, you want to, all them big shots, they go to Gruen. And he's a fair dealer. At one point, I had another wall full of fiddles, and the guy knocked on my door. It was Paul Miller, was president of Con Edison in Chicago, and he came to Northampton for a convention. And of course, he's looking for instruments. It's a disease that we all have. And he got my name, he knocked on my door, and he bought a bunch of fiddles off my, and at better prices than I would have asked for, because they were in a better market. A year or so later, I went to Springfield. Curly Brackett was closing his store. "Have you got any banjos?" He said, "No, I used to, they're all gone." He said, "I might have one up in the loft though, up there." So I get the ladder, push the drum away, and there's 3 banjos still in the brown wrappers from the factory, never unwrapped.
Jeez.
They were 3 top-of-the-line Paramounts, an Art Craft, an Aristocrat, and something special. 300, 3 1/4, 350 is what they sold for in 1924. So I brought them down.
And so what year was this?
Oh boy, that was the 60s. I would say the 60s.
And they hadn't been open since
They
the
never been
20-somethings?
open.
Oh my God.
And I didn't have that kind of money on me, but a buddy of mine across the street was a manager of it wasn't a bank, it was some kind of a lending company or something. And we were good buddies, and I went in there, I said, I need $1,000. He wanted the original price.
Wow.
Which is the 1920s on the price.
Yeah.
Which is nothing.
Nothing, yeah. So the guy gave me $1,000 cash, no paperwork, handshake. And I called Paul Miller up, and I shipped him, told him to start, and I shipped him, and I just doubled the price. I got him, I really sold them all for like $6.50 a piece. Went and paid it out back.
Terrific.
But it's the people you meet and the places you go with this whole hobby that makes it. This week, I repaired a violin for Sarah Michaels. Are you familiar with her?
Michael's Gallery? No.
Sarah the Fiddler.
Okay.
Google Sarah the Fiddler. What a woman she is. She plays everywhere. Wakes, funerals. I got this broken leg and hip, so I walk funny, but that's all right.
How'd that happen?
Oh, years ago I went out for the mail, and I slipped on the ice. This is our
That
itinerary.
happens to everyone, doesn't it?
She plays everywhere. I think her picture's on the other side. And I know her repertoire, and I have a standing invitation to sit in anytime I want.
Oh, this is nice little picture.
Yeah. She is a dynamite woman. When she plays, she puts on a show. She is animated.
Yeah.
She was musical director of the Soldiers' Home before it closed.
She's playing tonight
Did she work?
at Connaught Park Pavilion in Southampton.
Yeah.
That's cool. I have a gig tonight at exactly that same time, but that's nice to know. Can I keep this?
Yeah, you can.
I can take a picture if you want to get it back.
No.
And then she's in Munson on July 4th.
Everywhere. And she charges. She really knows how to charge.
Admission free, admission free, admission free.
Oh, they're paying her. But
Gotcha.
she gets like, well, I don't even know. But she's a lucky woman in that her mother, they own the Lexic lumber yard in Westfield and made a lot of money.
Mm.
And the mother gave her a house that you would kill for.
Nice.
It's a big brick ranch. And in her living room,
Wow.
she has 140 violins
Jeez.
that I sold her
Oh my God.
in like a 5-year period. What is that?
She started out as a Suzuki player at 4 years old.
With Craig Eastman.
The Suzuki teacher.
Here.
Who's Craig Eastman?
Craig Eastman, have you heard that name?
Maybe. Yeah, I know Eastman.
Well,
Look at this. Oh, that's cute.
when Craig Eastman was 13 years old, he was New England fiddle champ. And he came to my house to buy a mandolin. And when I heard this kid play, I had been playing at Pat Moore's house in Springfield.
You know, like,
Pat Moore, when he was young, became enamored with country music. And he was a truck driver. His father owned a little local truck business. And every day Pat would go driving, he'd listen to cowboy songs. He had a repertoire and a half. He could sing. He's a big guy. And Will Cormier introduced me when I heard this guy sing. I was playing upright bass at the time. We started playing, and that jam session was every Friday night for 40 years.
wow.
Every player in this valley that played country music ended up at Pat Moore's house. We had Skip Gorman, who was the state of Connecticut fiddle champ. We had the state of Kentucky mandolin champ. Only champions I played. I only played with champions. Because when you're not a good player and you're an ear player, I can follow you a millisecond behind you. That's the trick to playing. So where do we go now? Can you shut that off for 1 minute?
I'll edit it. You can talk about anything. You can talk about Northampton. You can talk about your bricklaying, your family, your childhood, your parents.
Well, parents.
Holyoke.
The big influence was, I was born in Manhattan, Borough Manhattan, Metropolitan Hospital, 1932. Mother played piano in the silent movies.
Oh, wow.
And violin in the orchestra pits at night. She was a talented. My grandparents were Austrian Jews. At age where he learned German and Yiddish, at age 7 he was orphaned.
This your maternal grandparents?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, my mother's a Jew. Yeah, I'm a Jew.
And your father?
I don't know. He died before I was born.
Or what is it? Where's he?
The name is French, but that's all I ever knew about it.
And is the name Ferret?
Ferret.
Is it short for anything?
No, Ferret, F-E-R-R-E-T.
Yep.
But in either case, at 18 months, my earliest recollection was breastfeeding, because on certain days when she couldn't feed me, and there's
I see parents on.
Keep
going on this.
there was a colored lady down the hall who had milk. And I remember the difference between the white face and the brown face.
Wow.
Now, when you breastfeed, you get something like 11 enzymes from your mother that makes you immune to the child with diseases.
Don't forget. Gotcha.
And so I got these enzymes from this Jewish mother and from an African woman. They're different enzymes. I never got childhood diseases. I haven't had a common cold. Like, if I got one, I can't remember it. I never get sick. When this business started here, this
COVID.
My 4 sisters, I was visiting them in Memphis, and they were going to Walmart to get the shots. So I looked in the dictionary, and I looked up the word virus. Do you know what the one-word definition is?
No.
Poison.
Yeah.
So I said, gee, the government says they're going to give you a little poison. Come back next month, we'll give you more poison. Then we'll give you a booster poison. And the paper I got says it's not approved by the FDA. It may cause this, there were 5 reasons why a thinking person wouldn't take it. So I told my sisters I'm going to go over to that station, and I never went. And I never got the shots, and I never got. All 4 sisters, one from Indiana, one from Albuquerque, and 2 from Memphis, all got the virus. It was given to them. They give it to you so you'll be immune, but the day they got it, their immune system wasn't that good.
How old are your sisters?
When I got drafted in 1953 to go in the Army, when you go in the Army, they give everybody a test. And 100 of the kids qualified to take the OCS exam. I qualified. Of the 100 that took it, only 5 passed. I was one of the 5. So I went to OCS for 8 weeks. And then they said, if you want to go the other 8 weeks, you'll be a battlefield lieutenant.
No, thank you.
So instead, I had my choice. I went to Cook and Baker School, where I graduated first. They sent me to mess management, where I graduated first. Because I'm a reader. I remember everything I read. And I got a mess hall in Fort Meade, Maryland. And a mess hall is a barracks, per se. And you get in line, you with your tray, and then you give your stuff. I wasn't going to feed generals that way. So what I did instead is, I only had 100 officers instead of the 250. So I got rid of some tables, and I had generals at this table, over there colonels, over there majors, so they had a little privacy. I played Mantovani on the sound system, kept the kitchen door closed, put curtains on the wall, tablecloths, and fed family style.
Mm-hmm.
I put the food on the table, and I trained the KPs to be waiters, but they had to stand back 6 feet from the table at parade rest and look there and hear nothing. But the radio, if the generals were talking about stuff, they couldn't hear it anyway. But if they wanted more carrots, raise the hand, KP to go over and feed them.
Cool. KP stands for?
Kitchen police.
Good.
So then what happened is I went home one weekend, because a cook is, you work a day on, 2 days off. And if you can get somebody to do your shift, you can have another. But I had a car when I was in the Army. So I went home on vacation, and my stepfather was there, and the 4 girls were 4, 6, 8, and 10 years old. I get back to the barracks, I went on shift, and when I came off shift, I sat by the window, and you can see dust, the sunlight, you can see the dust. And I got this premonition that my stepfather had died. I don't know where it came from. Door opens, the orderly comes in, Ferret, go to your orderly room, you're going home. So I goes over and the colonel says, got some bad news for you. I said, yes, I know, my stepfather died. So I had to borrow money from the Red Cross to go home. Applied for dependency discharge, got out of the Army, and I raised those 4 girls. Because I was already a bricklayer, making good money. So I took over the $60 a month mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
And I raised those 4 girls.
And was this in Holyoke or where?
In Holyoke, yeah. And to this day, they call me every month because I was their surrogate father.
So is the building you lived in still there?
Oh yeah, it's just a house on Rugby Street next to Chesky's house.
I can't use my phone. What was the address?
Oh, I don't remember that right now. That's incidental, the address. Why, do you know somebody lived around there?
I was living in Holyoke, so I got to know it.
What street you live on?
Brown Avenue?
I lived on 74 Brown Avenue next to Walter Cordis's, next to Goldman's store.
Right, which is no longer a store, but yes.
Yeah, and the house to the left, the big Victorian house, was 13 rooms. My mother bought that because we had so many kids. I lived in that house.
So I was living at 84 Brown.
Oh my God, you were up by Flitner.
Okay.
Did you know Flitner?
No, sorry. Can you take up your map, Laurie?
I raised rabbits, and he bought rabbits from me.
So you know exactly the building I was in?
Oh yeah.
It's like a gingerbread. Is it red
It's
brick?
a brick house.
Yeah.
With yellow trim and the little, I guess, widow's peak. I don't know what you.
Well, that was Walter Cordis's house.
I don't know.
Yeah, he was on the other side of Goldman's store. Yeah, going up the street that way.
Yes, so 84, if I'm not mistaken, was right next to a store, I was told.
That was Walter Cordis's house. He ended up being health director. Another significant thing about me, when my mother married, my mother married 6 times and had 8 children.
That's impressive.
But when her last husband died, she didn't want to marry a Jew because she didn't want to raise me as a Jew. She had other kids, but why was I special? So she married this Irish Catholic.
Yeah.
The first thing he did is take me to Blessed Sacrament Church to get Christianized. So I had to learn my catechism. And the day of the confirmation, there were 100 kids going into Blessed Sacrament Church. And there wasn't a cloud from here to Mexico. Clear blue. And like penguins, we were walking up toward the church. I get from here to the front door there, and a cloud comes by, and the leaves start turning over. About 6 feet from the front door and starting to sprinkle, but we squish underneath the canopy. Inside the vestibule, it's really distant thunder and it's clacking. Out of the vestibule, and it's a long procession down to the altar. Finally, Maureen Manning, kneels down and she got I remember the word "hearing license," whatever that meant. And she got a little slap in the face. And the bishop was O'Leary, and in his left hand he had a gold staff. And behind him there was a guy with a gold ball. I knelt down in front of this man, just about this close. And I looked him in the eye, and a bolt of lightning hit the tree right there on Hitchcock Street. And lightning came through the window and got his gold staff and sent him to the floor, and he's turning that color blue. So the usher priest pushes me aside to get to the bishop, and the guy with the gold ball, he got hit too, the lightning baboon. I get in line, and I go out onto Hitchcock Street, and it hadn't rained on Hitchcock Street. The rain ended in the middle of the church. It rained there. I mean, rain has to end somewhere, right? And when I stepped out onto Hitchcock Street, I'm 12 years old with a high voice, right? But when I hit the ground, in my head, I heard a deep voice say, "Leave this one alone." You don't think I'm special? He got hit by lightning, tried to convert me. My stepfather could never get me in church again.
That's the church. So here you go. You recognize that house?
That's Walter Cordes' house. So you lived on the other
Yeah, I lived in, that was that window was on the second floor.
Yeah.
And it was
And Charlie Goldman's was here, and I was right next door.
That's very funny.
What year were you there?
I was there for the past 3-4 years.
Oh no, that was back in 1947.
I just moved out a month or two ago.
When we lived in that house in 47, I had an Uncle Joe who was in the Navy, and I had 3 uncles, and because I had no father, they all doted on me. They always took me fishing, and I hated fishing, but he was in the Navy in Portland, Maine, and there's Casco Bay, and he sent me Greyhound bus tickets to go up for a 2-week vacation. So I goes up there, and I lived with him for a couple of weeks, and his job was delivering film from ship to shore and back and forth. And they had like a PT boat. There's 4 men in this ship. So they put a little sailor suit on to make me look like a sailor, you know. And he showed me how the boat worked. When you push this lever, the boat went faster, and whatever. And
How old were you now?
1947, so I was born in 32, 15 years old, something like that. And but they proceeded at one point to go down in the bottom of the boat and start drinking, and they got drunk, and the boat's getting kind of choppy. So I figured out that if I pushed this lever, it would be smoother, and it was, instead of this way. But I'm going out of Casco Bay. They showed me the compass, but that didn't mean nothing to me. Sooner or later, a Coast Guard cutter comes along the side and took over the boat and brought us back. And that was my trip to Maine. Uncle Gus took me fishing at Westfield, the Westfield River, and he got bit by a spider and got delirious.
Jesus.
And I kind of walked him out to the road, but we couldn't see the car, but a state trooper came by and gave us a ride to the hospital, and they fixed him up. And my uncle Charlie took me fishing at the Aldridge Lake on a hot afternoon, and you couldn't talk with Charlie. You just sit there, you know. And the fish weren't biting until like a big cloud rolled by, and he's starting to roll. And I got the line, and the fish were jumping on the line then when it rained. So that was I gave up on fishing. I never went fishing again.
That's funny.
And my 2 sons, both intellectually gifted, I tutored Eric, the older one, when he was 15. I tutored him in mathematics, because that was my subject. When I came out of the Army, by the way, I went to Westfield State 5 years at night and studied geometry, trig, calculus, logic, analytical geometry, just for $2 a course. And I just loved mathematics. So I tutored Eric in math, but I also taught him how to be number 1. So he was a Mensa when he came out of high school. and he had his choice of 5 colleges that wanted him. Rensselaer wanted him, and I forget the other, but he wanted to be an architect. So he went to Pratt Institute for 5 years, free, and graduated first in his class.
Right there in Brooklyn.
So IBM hired him at the door at $140,000 a year. He stayed with them 7 years, quit, invented something he knew they needed and sold out for $10 million. Put the money in a Swiss bank. And I haven't seen him since.
Oh my God. What year are we talking about? How many years back?
That would be 85 or in there somewhere.
This is your son?
The reason is, my wife had inherited $250,000 back when she was young. And she was tight with money. She was like her mother. Her mother, they squeezed the dollar. But in either case, Eric wanted to borrow some serious money from his mother. But she wanted a note. And she got a note, witnessed and stamped, and he was going to pay it back at a certain time at a little bit of interest. Never paid her. We're talking thousands of dollars. And she started hounding him. And he wouldn't pay her back. And
is this your wife, the mother of him?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
He considered it, he said, it's my inheritance. And he never, but so he divorced, he changed his number and he divorced his mother. But me too. But when I sold my big house, I probably had 4 houses and never had a mortgage. Because as a bricklayer, I bought that one on Rugby Street when the mortgage got paid off. And then I bought one on Norwood Terrace, and I bought one like a KV type house for $16,000. And I made money on every one. So when I became building commissioner in Holyoke, I only had 2 primary jobs. For 22 years I was a brick mason, and 22 years I was a building commissioner. And I always wanted to live in West Holyoke. And land in West Holyoke was like $60,000 for a building plot, and there weren't many of them. But one guy said that Nutty Mr. Taylor had a piece of land, he might sell it to you. Sunny day, I goes out and knock on the door. I says, Mr. King says, you might have a piece of land for sale. He says, you can buy it all.
Nutty Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, Nutty Mr. Taylor. And I says, how much? You serious? I'm serious. $29,000 for 10 acres of land.
In Holyoke.
In Holyoke, and in West Holyoke on
Which is
Crossroad.
Oh,
There
yes.
was 150-foot frontage on Crossroad and 350 down Southampton Road
Yes.
as it goes down the hill.
Yes.
And it was right next door to Alan O'Connell's son. And Alan always wanted to buy that land, and Taylor wouldn't sell it to him because he was an Irishman. So I went down to Alan's office. He was running a water purification system using osmosis, and he had something in New York. And he made a lot of money with this system. So I went down to his office one day. I said, you still want to live next to Brian? He said, yes. I said, give me $29,000. He went in the back room and gave me $29,000. He said, what's this for? I said, you just bought land next to Brian. Those 2 lots, there's 2 lots there. And we got, the deed was from the King of England. It was a land court deed, that's what it was. That's how old that property was, a land court deed. So we got our congressman to go to Boston, made an appointment for me, or I forget what politician it was. And we went down there and I had it divided 5, I wanted the upper 5, he got the lower 5 acres.
So he bought 2 plots, is what
He
you
bought-
said? And how many plots were there altogether, would you say?
Well, he built, he ended up building 3 houses
Gotcha.
on his street.
And how many did you have to
I
yourself?
just had that one.
Was yours large or?
Oh yeah, it was.
That's right. So yours could have been divided up like crazy.
No, because only the frontage. I only had frontage for
Gotcha.
one. But I was an advocate of modular homes Because when they build a modular home in the factory, you know, on rainy days or cold days, carpenters are a little slack. But in the factory, they put the floor up off the ground, and you put down your frame for your first floor and this and that. And everything is glued and screwed. They don't use nails. So that when they lift the box up, it doesn't flex. So I bought a 4-box, and because I was building inspector, they wanted me to have one of their houses.
Okay.
So instead of $92,000, I got it for $72,000, delivered and finished, installed, everything. What a deal. But I ended up selling that house for like $250,000. And when I did sell it, that's when I retired. I moved to Florida. And I had gone down the year before and bought a house in Holiday, Florida, above Tarpon Springs. And with the rest of the money, I bought one in Vermont, in Searsburg, and I gave them both to my youngest son. Because I knew he'd never have enough money to have a house with no mortgage, so I gave him 2. So he rents the one in Florida, and he lives in Vermont.
So your younger son stayed in touch with you?
Oh yeah, I Father's Day, and once a month we get together.
That's nice. Does your younger son stay in touch with your other son?
No.
Right.
He divorced him. Matter of fact, if you look up on your Google machine there, look up Eric Ferret, North Granby, Connecticut. F-E-R-R-E-T. It's got to be North Granby, Connecticut. And the bizarre thing is, there are 10 Eric Ferrets in Connecticut. How the hell could 10 people name their kid Eric? No Frank or George or Harry. There are 10 Erics. I didn't bother them, and I wouldn't have named them all.
Right. Talk about a lazy father. Same name. That's funny. I mean, interesting and very weirdly
Now,
sad.
Eric Ferret, if you look him up today, he is the international director of a corporation dealing with carbon ion proton therapy.
Correct.
Contracts up to $300 million.
This is your son-in-law.
That's Eric.
Yeah.
He still has his house in Switzerland and one in North Granby, Connecticut.
Mm-hmm. So Eric is the young one.
Eric is the older one.
Oh, the one that was not, you're not in touch with.
Peter.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry. And who's the younger one?
Phone.
What's the younger one?
Petter was intellectually brighter than his older brother.
Well, what's his name?
Petter, P-E-T-E-R. It's a Norwegian way of saying Peter.
Very cool.
And all Peter ever wanted to do, or Petter, was hunt and fish. So he worked at Sam's Sporting Goods, he worked for Orbis. But he is smarter, he's smarter than me, because I would read a book at night, I'd leave it on the coffee table, in the morning it would be turned around. But he's a philosopher. He never wanted to marry. He lives in that house up there, no mortgage. What's it say?
So this is your older son, the one, yeah, Pratt Institute, North Granby. Okay.
Says he's
Read it out.
manager of
Read
some
out loud what it
Read
does
what
say.
is
So, okay, I'll read it. Project manager at HSFPD LLC. Healthcare and Science Facility Project Development LLC. Pratt Institute, North Granby, Connecticut. Joint review profile. Oh, let's join. Do you do LinkedIn?
Yeah,
So you have to sign in on it.
I guess. So, do you have any interest in reconnecting with Eric?
He won't answer.
Oh, he won't answer.
He divorced his mother and me. And I don't know why, because when I retired, I had a house full of nice furniture. Because among other things, I was dealing in Oriental rugs. I had worked for Al Union in Springfield free on a Saturday, and he taught me about rugs. I learned how to repair them, color them, know what they are. And I did the same thing with oil paintings. I learned how to restore oil paintings, and I dealt in oil paintings. Guns. Years ago, I got enamored with double-barrel shotguns because I like to hunt grouse. Smith's Ferry was infested with grouse. And you can be walking down a little bit, and right where her sneaker is, the grouse waits, and he takes off like a bullet. Boom! Flap their wings, and they put a tree between you and them. And you got to have a really quick shotgun to get them, and you don't get many of them. But I got dealing in double-barrel shotguns, and I learned how to restore them, how to redo the bluing, refinish the gun stocks. In Benton's in Connecticut, there was a big gun dealer. The Connecticut shooters wanted double-barrel shotguns, but the Vermont shooters wanted Winchester 30 caliber lever actions. This is after World War II. So I would buy 3 Winchesters for $30 a piece, drive to Brattleboro and swap them even for doubles, go back to Benton, and he gave me 100 a piece. I did that every weekend for years.
Wow.
Till I get a letter from the gun people in Springfield, you gotta get a federal license.
Oh,
So
funny.
everything I've ever done all my life is under the table.
Funny.
And I don't claim. But when I retired, I get a Social Security check and I get a civil service check. But it's not much money, it's like $2,000 a month. So when I got to Florida, I went to a tax guy. He said, "Where's the rest of it?" I said, "There ain't no rest of it." He said, "Go home." He says, "You don't qualify to pay taxes." Now that was 1989. I haven't filed income tax since 1989 because my income never went up on the books. I mean, the fact that I make bucks on the side hustling fiddles and banjos and rugs, and I'm a camel herder at heart. I just like to find
Camel herder.
stuff.
That's funny.
Where else? But it's the music, the instruments. Oh yeah, Ralph Baker. I met Ralph Baker. He was living in the old SD organ factory up in Vermont.
Oh, I know that one. Brattleboro.
And upstairs, you can see through the boards. And he's in there with a little wood stove, but he was a genius. Ralph he knew more about instruments. And there was a lady in Springfield, had an ad in the paper to sell some instruments, and I went down. And she had been a teacher. She had a Gibson Florentine mandolin. That's the one with the curly cue, almost unused. She had a Gibson 5-string banjo, unused. And she had an O.M. Martin. It was a prototype, OM42. They only made 2 of them. It was a prototype. I bought them all, I think, for like $800. The guitar was $200. So I go to see Ralph, who knew more than me about guitars. And Ralph had a little music store up there for a while. And he looked in his register and he had $1,400. He said, "I'll give you $1,400 for it." I gave him 14. He called George Gruen, told him what he had, ship it. George gave him $2,400.
Everybody's making.
And
Good.
George's next paper he put out, "Finest Guitar in America."
Wow.
$4,800.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. That Estes, Oregon, right? Oregon factory. It's an unusual building because it's all sides are slate.
Yeah. But see how you get around in this hobby.
Yeah.
You go places. I got a call once from Bob Steiger. He owned Steigers in Holyoke in the old days. And he's going to have a Christmas party. Would you and Scotty like to play? Yeah. Oh, prior to that, I wanted to play at the Yankee Peddler because that was the coolest place in town. So I went to see Tamburi, and he never had live music there. He says, "I was thinking of a piano. What do you guys?" "A banjo and a bass fiddle." He said, "A banjo?" He says, "This is a fine restaurant." I said, "I'll tell you what, you open up the big room downstairs, put on 2 bartenders. I'm going to charge $3 at the door." I had 100 people show up, $300, right? When Tambori showed up and heard these people, and the great Scott had him humming and strumming and singing. When Scotty was 6 years old, he took banjo lessons. At 13, when Pizzatola Strummers had a 60-piece band that toured the East Coast giving concerts, there were guys 40, 50, 60 years old. When Scotty was 13, he played first chair. And he played a 4-string chord melody. He didn't play single notes like I have to. He played 4 strings at one time, and he could crank up that Stardust and Alabama Jubilee.
So he could chord like a mad one. Right?
He never moved his hand. He knew how to manipulate. His left hand never left first position. And what he did, instead of tuning the banjo, it was still C, G, D, A, but the low C string, he put a high C there. So it became a completely treble instrument.
Yeah.
And his favorite chord was a 6th.
Right.
Whatever the hell that is.
Yeah.
But his fingers were like this. He wasn't like Peabody, who I met. Peabody was a faker. Remember Eddie Peabody?
No.
He played a plectrum banjo, and Arthur Godfrey had him. He was a naval commander, and he retired. It was from Worcester. And he bought his Vega, gave him a new banjo every year to play it on stage, gold-plated. And he would sell it to his teacher, Art Pruno, in Worcester, and I would buy him from Art Pruno. But what Eddie Peabody did is he thought he was working, but he was barring half of what he was doing. But his strum and everything was fast, and they thought he was a great banjo player. He couldn't carry Roland Seacott's picks, for God's sake. So I went to see Tambori. I told you we had 300 people. So we played upstairs for 2 years. And I went one day, I insisted on getting paid at cash at the end of every night, but the manager was away, so I went back the following morning. And a guy came in with a pretty young girl with a stack of piano music. And I overheard him say there were no real banjoists left, because we had a picture of us in the marquee there, bow tie and a red vest. He said, this guy just plays the banjo. Tucked on his shirt, I said, that guy's a great banjoist, and I'll bet you last night's pay he is, and you can be the judge. I'll take that bet. Call up Scotty. If you want to get paid, get up here. He said, Christ, I got the engine out of my Volkswagen. He said, I'll take the bike. He had a Harley. Black leather jacket, handsome little Irishman with $1 million smile, black shiny hair. The image of this biker coming through the door. Bacon silver bell I sold him, he's silver plated. And he says to the guy, what do you want to hear? Anything in the world, he says. So Scotty sees a stack of music. He took the top piece off the top, looked at it, closed it, put it down and played it. She cried. She couldn't play on a Steinway what that guy did on it. And the song was Fantasy. It was Chopin's Fantasy Impromptu in A flat minor. I'm always chasing rainbows. Just about is arpeggio. What do you call that? Tremolo. He milked those notes. So we played for half an hour. I left I had the bass in the. He said, "What do I owe you?" And the money was sitting in the envelope. I said, "Well, let's see. I hope enough." And we were getting $225 a night in 1958. That was good money for 2 guys. He got the extra quarter. So then Bob Steiger was having a Christmas party. He said, would you guys play my Christmas party? Yeah. Never mentioned money. And we had all the big shots. The mayor in those days was, I can't remember his name this minute, but there was a whole gang of the upper guys, the big shots in town that hung around the peddler. Where was I going? Oh, so we played So we went down to play for Steiger. And all these big shots were there, and boy, he had them humming and strumming and dancing. His trick was when you get to an old guy dancing with a pretty girl, don't stop because you keep playing. So at the end of the night, he comes over, he says, "What I owe you?" And I said, I was figuring like $2.25 for what we got at the peddler, right? I said, give me $225. So he reaches in, he gives me $225. Then he counts off another $225 for Scotty.
Oh,
He thought I wanted $225.
Right.
Then he said, "Here, Christ, here's another $50. We're talking $500. Just then, George Kelly, who owns Kelly's Lobster House, come by and said, "You guys are great." He said, "We're having a party down at Kelly's tomorrow night. Will you come down and play, and I'll pay you with this cheap bastard." So he goes down the next night, and we play for Kelly, blew the roof off the place, and he comes over. He says, "What I owe you?" And there's Steiger standing right there. I said, "Bob, how much did you give me last night to play?" He says, $500. Kelly says, $500. But he called him a cheap bastard. He paid me. Oh my God. But it's been a lifetime of meeting people. When I was dealing a lot in violins, I was accumulating bows. But I never sold the bows. And every now and then you got some really decent ones, so I keep them. And I heard of a guy in Connecticut that collected bows. And I was bringing them down, and he was paying me like $25 a piece for them, or something like that. But they weren't great bows. There were some that were mediocre or better. But I went there one day and his house guest was there. Well, this guy was Victor Borga's conductor. And there's Victor sitting in a chair right there.
Oh.
And I didn't fawn over him. I says, "I like your work." And so I met Victor Borga. Henny Youngman I met at a airplane station out in someplace I was going to see my sister. So
Also a fiddler.
yeah, and he had a violin under his case when I was bringing a mandolin to play at I think it was my brother's birthday or something. And I said, "What do you say, Henny? You and I get together later and play the song?" He smiled, but that was it.
That's good. Well, it's funny because Victor, you mentioned someone playing the music upside down.
Oh, yeah.
You said that long. That's what Victor used to do. Right?
I've got a DVD of Victor.
Yeah, he's very
He was
funny.
a funny guy.
Right.
And what's frustrating is he never finished a song.
Right.
It used to drive me crazy. But in this one, he has his friend come, who's another piano player, and they sit on one stool, two pianos, and then they swing the stool around.
Yes. I've seen two piano players, very good. This was in town, actually. Remember the Green Street Cafe?
Yeah.
Right. So they had a nice piano there, and these two wonderful pianos, Joel Martin and it'll hit me that Eugene Newman, I think. And Eugene was playing the gig, and Joel said, "Hey," and they both sat down side by side, and they tore up that piano.
Yeah.
And then halfway through, the guy on the right gets up and goes, "Oh, yeah."
Bobby
And
Wiggins. Bobby Wiggins used to play in Wiggins Tavern.
Oh, wow.
In Northampton.
Yeah.
And I heard he was there, solo piano, and I went with my bass. I stayed 6 months with Bobby Wiggins. I went to school with him, because every now and then he'd say, "Play this," and I'd play that bit, and he'd come up, and so I played with Bobby Wiggins. There was another piano player in town. Can't remember. He lived across from the jail, but he had to read every note. He couldn't play without reading. Oh, the funny part with him is, I played a gig with him one time, and somebody wanted "Happy Birthday, Harriet." He reaches on the thing to get the book, the fake book that had "Happy Birthday, Harriet," and the fake book would start with one song, and when it came to "Happy Birthday," it was here, but the rest of it was on the next page.
Oh, boy.
So he goes, "Happy birthday to you."
You actually add in extra time
Yeah.
to tell that.
And here I am hanging on that note.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Do you know anybody who deals in pianos? I saw a free Yamaha grand piano, good condition in Vermont, in Craigslist a few days ago.
Yeah. The trouble with pianos is
They're big.
moving them, yeah.
Right.
I bought a violin off a lady uptown here one day, and she had a lovely old Kittering, is it a Kittering? It was like an English name, and it was a grand piano in nice shape. And there's a guy up in Whately that rebuilds pianos. I can't think of his name this minute, he's in my book. I have everybody on earth in my book here. And he came down, and she wanted to give it away, but I said, this guy can afford to buy it. So he did come down, he offered her $400 and he took it out of there.
By the way, who are these people in your, by any chance your father?
No, I never met my father.
Oh, that's right.
Here,
Who are those folks?
this is me when I graduated from high
Oh,
school.
let's go take a peek at that.
This is me when I graduated from high school. I had to keep a stick to keep the pretty girls away. That's my wife when I married her. I'm playing bass fiddle in Florida. Those are my grandparents that raised me, and I was playing tenor banjo, and that's my Jewish grandmother that raised me. There's the Volkswagen, my toy.
That's very good.
But King Street was an amazing street, and there were about 3 kids my age, and then there were kids a couple of years older. And every night we would play hide and seek and all this business. And the older boys watched out for us younger guys, because in the winter when we slid down the hill, they made sure we didn't go past my grandfather's house because he'd end up at the trolley tracks. My grandfather bought me a paper route off the girl across the street for $1.50. It was a Sunday paper route, 30 customers, and I got a red wagon with it. To this day, I can tell you the name of everybody on that paper route. Zabrowski, Zielinski, Zeeland, Height, Hillard, Barry, up one side, down the other side. So I've got a good memory. Trying to think of any other incidents. But there were the guys I met that had instruments. Oh, my mother called me up one day. She had seen a paper. There was a guy in Maine who had a barn. It was Elmer's barn, and there were violins hanging from the rafters. So I hopped in my car with $1,000 in my pocket, and I goes up. And I'm looking around, and I said, how much are these fiddles? He says, they're all marked. The prices were stupid.
Mm.
And in a little shelf there, he had the same reference books that we all had to tell you the value of violins. He wanted more in the book. But he had one fiddle there, and he wanted like $1,000. He says, that's a real Amati. I said, it can't be an Amati. It wasn't an Amati. Well, it says so. And he had in the first page it says, labels are put in there to fool you, don't believe it.
Oh, wow.
I said, will you feel good? And he had his expert there who was a priest. I could tell he was a priest. He didn't have the collar, but everything else was black without the collar. I said, would you cheat me if you sold me that for $1,000? Oh, I couldn't buy one fiddle.
That's funny.
Well, I'd go anywhere for fiddles. I was buying fiddles from Baker, David Baker up in Dummerston. He is an expert. David Baker is one sharp fiddle guy.
Is he still there?
Oh yeah, he's still there. And I was buying violins off of him, but low end, but he deals in high end fiddles. If I get a good violin, he'll buy them for $800-900 or whatever, and sell them for $3,000-4,000. He's got the market of colleges up there, and
Hmm.
he has a beautiful studio.
David Baker. You have to look him up. Did you write
David
that down?
Baker, gentleman, nice
What's the
studio.
name, Baker?
David Baker.
Yeah, David Baker.
Send me an email, please.
Nice yellow house he lives in. But I meet him in the parking lot in Brattleboro when we do business. And
David Baker Violins. Dummerston. That's funny. You meet him in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Which one? Which parking lot?
Jimmy Berghoff, bass player, left-handed bass player.
I know him.
Yeah,
Usually playing the 5-string bass.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's a piano mover.
Yep. What about him?
David Baker, Dutton Farm Road, Dummerston, Vermont. Do you want his phone number?
Sure. Lawyer's writing it down.
802
Mm-hmm.
254
Mm-hmm.
4425. You can mention my name.
Sure. Yeah, now that we're neighbors.
Guy in Rochester, Bernenzio, big dealer of instruments.
Hmm.
I used to do trade instruments with him. He was into a certain kind of guitar, and at that point I liked certain kind of banjos.
So as building inspector and the bricklayer, what are your recollections of?
Well, my hallmark in this town, if you go across the street from the Academy of Music, there's
Yes.
a church on the corner,
Yeah.
and a wall with a big cross in it. I built that wall all by myself in 1958 when I was 26.
Jeez.
Now that's random stone, no two stone alike, and the face is this way. So you couldn't pull a line to lay though that you do brick. You had to do it by eye. Now we had plumb lines for the corners that are perfect, and that cross is perfect. And yet when the sun hits that wall, there's no bumps in it.
I'm trying to see which corner that is on.
State and Maine.
Um,
State and Maine.
so the Academy of Music is there.
And right across the street is the church on the corner.
So the church is kind of a light-colored church.
Yeah, it's a Tennessee sandstone.
Yes. Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
And they have light opera and stuff like that going on there these days.
Well, I don't know what they're doing.
Joshua Garcia, mayor since November 2021.
What's your name?
Joshua Garcia.
Oh, yeah. But this jaded girl is after her job.
Joshua is a guy. Yes, that's very nice.
Want to play a song?
Yes.
Is this your G note?
I'll find out. Let me go over here. Beautiful dreamer. You know that one, Mike?
Bailey.
Yeah, we should grab the lyrics, but that's right. Yay. Take it to the B section. tune to you or you tune to me?
Well, I got a little pitch pipe right here.
Okay, we're just a little bit off.
How about an A note?
Sure. Yeah, I'm sharpish. Oh, bring that out. I think you're a little flat. Bring that one up just a hair. Bring up that string just a hair. That's better. Okay, here, let me hear it. Oh, wait a minute, you hit a wrong note.
What the hell?
It should be a flat note.
Really?
Yeah, what? It's a.
Ah. Remember that phrase? This is the way I heard it.
Okay. That's later. That's later.
Okay.
And then it goes. Go ahead. Come. Okay, from the top.
I won't play that note. It's not.
There you go. And you go. There you go.
I don't think I know the rest of that song.
That's it.
You know, the other problem I have is most people think of two things at one time. I think of three things at one time. I've got this other thing
Natural. So in terms of solfege,
Yep.
this is T. T, do, but don't do T, do te. It's your solfege, man.
Do, di, re, re, mi, fi.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, the chromatic, yeah.
Yeah, that good shit.
We learned that, or I learned that somewhere.
Yeah, it's good stuff. What else you got? Oh, nice. Oh, nice.
I'm always
Chasing rainbows or something?
I'm always chasing rainbows, or
Oh, he's a.
Let's go with it.
Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up there in the cloud. Oh, I meant to go to the ending, that's right. Away above the chimney tops, that's where you find me. Somewhere over the rainbow blue. Not really, no.
I want to share something.
That's right, you love your DVDs, don't you? Go ahead.
I want to hear Streisand. No.
Don't you want to hear Lori? Well, I got a better idea.
Well,
Let's hear Lori. Streisand. You haven't heard Lori.
okay, what are you doing?
She sings. She knows her
Sings
shit.
the song.
She knows her shit.
I know some shit.
Do that, because Karl he likes to play the melody. So,
What's the song?
What's the song?
let's do the. Isn't it romantic? Remember that one?
I've heard it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We'll fudge along. Let Lori let it. Isn't it? Please sing loud, baby.
La da 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 da, on such a night as this, isn't it romantic?
Let's see.
Lady da da da, such a lover's kiss, oh so deep, music in the moonlight, would it be love?
No.
See, I don't know my shit as much as I should.
Well, pick a song you know.
It might as well be spring. Do you know that
Well, I've
song?
heard it.
Wow.
Do you know I wonder who's kissing her now?
Oh, go ahead, you
I
do.
don't know.
You don't know that?
Do you know it?
Sorry, no, I don't.
That doesn't know the
Here you go, Ray. Here you go, Ray. Here's one for you. In the key of in G.
Okay.
If I loved you, words would it come in an easy way? Round and circle I'd go. If I love you, time and again, you would hear me say, all I want you to know. Longing to tell you, but afraid and shy. I let my magic moment pass me by. Soon you'll leave me. Soon you'll leave me. Off you will go. Off you will go in the mist of day. Never to know how I love you. If I love you. Right?
Yeah, great song.
I picked that one out just for you because I knew you know that one. What else you got? You stump me half the time. You stump me often. Do what dear, how may a drop of golden sun. Me a name I call myself.
Hello. Yes.
So we should wrap it up soon.
No bother at all. What's up?
Yes,
I thought it was today. No, it is tomorrow. Yeah, it is Thursday. Okay.
I don't have
That's
the air
okay.
in.
It's incidental. We can take care of it.
You don't have one?
I don't have that air in my battery. My battery.
1953.
Cool.
What was the book?
Communism, Democracy, and Catholic Power. The author maintained that the Roman Church, along with communism, would destroy America. What he didn't know is all we had to do was wait a while. We'll do it on our own.
Yeah.
We're in trouble.
Yeah.
This country and this world is in trouble.
And I'd like you to wax eloquent, as they say, about aliens.
Oh, yeah.
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 Lori hasn't heard this.
Well, very briefly, if you look at the word God in the dictionary, it says the word denoting a spiritual concept. But in the name, the original God, about 15,000 years ago, people from another planet, which is advanced, came here in their spaceships, and they needed gold for their planet, not for jewelry, but probably for electronics. And when they got here, we were Cro-Magnon, little guy with a brain the size of a tangerine. And they couldn't get us to work because you can't get guys with no brain to work. So what they did is they mated with the Cro-Magnon women and created a hybrid race of people with the most advanced organism on Earth in their head, the Homo sapien brain. Now, I'm not a religionist, but if you look in the Hebrew Bible, that is a book of oral tradition finally written down. In Genesis 6, it says, the Nephilim did appear on Earth now and later, and of course with the women of Earth. Paragraph down, it says, man was created in the image of the gods. There's no doubt in my mind that we are a hybrid race of people gone astray. But early man, the Homo erectus, he was really an animal. He watered at the water hole with the rest of the beasts. But Homo sapien, we're such a wonderful species, and yet we don't know it. In our entire education system, our civilization is an illusion. This world is not what people think it is. There's a saying that the sheep are meant to be sheared. All we are is sheep. And the evil people at the top of the rung, they're using us. You know, when you get $1 trillion, you don't need it. There should be a law saying nobody gets more than $1 million. And if you own a business, turn it over to your son and go retire. We shouldn't be having people accumulating that kind of wealth at the expense of the workers. So
Right.
there should be no poverty in this country, no hunger. But the biggest problem is overpopulation. The world is overpopulated.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it'll evolve. I got a maid at my age. I can hold my breath to see 95. So and that's where my driver's license expires.
Oh, wow. How often do you drive?
Every single day.
Oh, yeah, good.
Are you kidding me?
Good.
That car is, that's a cute little toy.
I mean, so what kind is it?
Is it the VW?
The yellow VW.
Oh, that same one there?
Yeah.
Adorable.
I just bought that with 40,000 original miles
Mm.
on a 16-year-old car.
Mm.
That car is 16 years old.
That's unusual.
5-cylinder, 4-wheel drive,
Oh, 5-cylinder. So
automatic.
nothing.
It's got all the toys and.
How do they organize? How do they array the cylinders?
I don't know. German engineering.
Do they put them? Are they lying down and?
I never look under the hood of a car. I don't know anything about it. Except to dust it off. I do dust it off.
Oh yeah, that's high maintenance. Yeah, yeah. So how would they put the? Okay, fine. I'll figure
Well,
it out.
you can research it.
Yeah.
Look it up online.
Oh,
Duh.
as he says, look up on your Google machine.
That's right.
That's all I know.